guys? Joel here for Black.Death.Thrash.Doom, and I'm going to talk about a band that most of you guys are actually probably familiar with, and that is Shining from Sweden. And, you know, these guys are mostly known for their later albums, which combine a lot of atmospheric black metal elements with almost avant-garde metal, and have some pretty over-the-top vocals. And it seems like the later albums get all the attention now, but nobody really talks about the earlier ones anymore. I am going to talk about my favorite Shining album of all time, and that is Shining 3, Angst. I actually brought out my vinyl just for you guys so you guys can actually see it. Presentation-wise, the CD and the vinyl are nothing too extraordinary. It's a slipcover. It doesn't actually have a gatefold or anything like that. But here's the back, and here's the track listing, and it's got the lyrics on the back here. And yeah, it's nothing too horribly special or anything, but this is one of my favorite vinyls and one of my favorite albums of all time. It's so good. I can listen to this album basically any time. It's got a real brooding atmosphere that is kind of unmatched. It's hard to describe how much the bass really influences this album. It's very upfront, it takes center stage, and it moves the songs along in a plodding, almost doomy way, so that even when the guitar riffs are going very fast, the bass is just plodding in the background and just going slow sometimes and marching on, and it creates this atmosphere that is almost suffocating, very dreary, and it's one of those albums that just has a very strange vibe to it in a good way. Also of note, Hellhammer plays drums on this album. He actually played drums for a couple albums, and I find that his drum performance on this album and Shining number 4 are probably two of his better performances in his career. They're just very intricate, and they move everything very well, and it's not like they ever are overbearing or overpowering. They're just perfect, and when there's slower, doomier moments, they don't really get boring. He still uses intricacies with the cymbals and snares and just all kinds of intricacies that are mixed in that make it to be a drum performance that's really almost unmatched. It's a really, really good drum performance. I highly suggest you listen to it and just kind of pick out the drums for yourself. The vocals back then on these first 3 albums are not as over the top as they were or are on the newer albums. They are still pretty experimental sometimes. He screams and he wails and they sound pretty painful, and yeah, it's hard to describe what his vocals do, but back then they were a little more in the background. They were not so up front, and it seems like Shining these days are more recognized for his vocals than the musical abilities of the band. Back then, though, I think the musical abilities of the band were just incredible, and they still are. It's just it seems almost overshadowed by his crazy vocals. And back then, with him having just a little bit more of a standard vocal style and not being so up front, it lets the music breathe a little better. And that's another point with the bass and the guitars and the drums. Everything breathes very well in this album. There is nothing that sticks out so much that it's going to distract you from other elements in this album. But again, the bass is almost what takes front stage, because it's just unusual to hear bass this prominent in a black metal album, and man, it works really well. The third track in particular, man, the bass line in the beginning sounds like a huge, giant, grotesque monster just stomping around in the night, causing havoc, and these fast guitar riffs are going behind it, and it just causes this weird mix of atmospheres from the slow plodding to the fast atmospheric, and it's just an experience I think you guys all should definitely check out. There is an instrumental on this album at the very end. I think it's the 5th track out of 6, and oddly enough it reminds me of a piece from Final Fantasy III, 6 in Japan, but yeah, I'll have to maybe post a link below if I can find that song from Final Fantasy, and you can compare track 5 on Shining 3 with this Final Fantasy song. But anyways, that's all I have to say about this album. Don't ignore Shining's earlier albums. Their earlier efforts are really, really well done, and the atmosphere behind them is just incredible, just suffocating. But yeah, if you'd like the video, please give a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos by me, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. I always appreciate that. And That's all I have for you guys. Keep the metal, motherfuckers.